And there we are. Good morning, everyone. It is 11 a.m. on February 15th. Happy belated Valentine's Day to you and your loved ones, and you all of you. Yeah. So, good morning. It is now time for the DocuSign workshop. I didn't mean to poo-poo Valentine's Day, by the way. Valentine's Day is a very important day. So, that aside, good morning. We're going to be doing DocuSigns today, and today we're going to be focusing on envelopes, specifically all about envelopes. And I'm excited about this because, when we talk about all the different things that DocuSign does, what it comes down to is being able to put forms and documents inside of envelopes and get those envelopes sent out so that we can get them signed. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Very exciting. Wouldn't you agree? I thought you would. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Of course, whenever we are talking about anything to do with DocuSign, we are always talking about it from the perspective of command. I speak with a lot of different agents, approximately 750 of you or so. And I'm going to be honest with you. I find a lot of agents don't understand or just aren't aware. No, that sounds terrible. Don't understand is a bad word. Strike that. They're not aware of the fastest road to success. Simply put, I would like it so that you guys can get where you need to be as quickly as possible and pretty much not have to waste time. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you how to get to Sesame Street. To you knew I was going to say that. I'm going to show you how to get from the beginning of a transaction all the way through to DocuSign. It's going to take me about a minute. Okay, just if you need to watch this video in slow motion, you can go over to our YouTube channel, kwtechtube.com, kwtechtube.com, and you can actually slow down the video. I'm just going to do this for you so that you can see how easy it actually is to create a transaction in DocuSign from command. Here we go. Go to contacts. And in the contacts area, find your contact that you want the transaction to be the primary signer. So the primary signer is who you're going to find the contact for. Not a business, not an LLC, not a Mr. and Mrs., not two names. It's one name. It's a signature. Think about it this way. This is the primary signer. So if it's somebody on a trust, that's the person that's the primary on the trust. The trust is something we'll deal with later. That's the name of an object. But the person is the signer. Now, find the person. Go to the opportunity section of that person. Create the opportunity. In the opportunity, you have the opportunity type. I'll choose listing. That's the what. The who is already been loaded because of the fact that we started the opportunity from the contact. So we have 2 parts out of 3 for our opportunity name. We have the who and the what just by doing that. Then we'll check and make sure that we add the where. Who, what, and where. Who, what, and where. That's the name of the opportunity. It's always the name of the opportunity. That's the simplest way to do it. Next up, you're going to put a commission rate in. So you put your commission rate in there. Now, there are other objects on this form, but we're not going to cover those right now. Create. You've now created a brand new opportunity. Now you're ready to edit the opportunity and get it ready for DocuSign. So you now open the brand new opportunity from within the contact still. The opportunity opens up. You're on the details tab. You have the name of the contact. This is the primary signer of this contract. So you have the name of that person there. You have the name of the opportunity, who, what, and where. Now compliance has something that they can track and they can trace this entire opportunity from beginning to end. Next, if this is a listing and if the listing is already in the MLS, click this button, select from listings, because that's going to pull the MLS data. If it is not in the MLS yet, but you want to get it onto the contracts, the property address I'm talking about, then click this pencil icon on the right-hand side and just use a generic street address for a property. Remember, if you use just the address and you do not use the MLS, you will need to come back later and add the MLS. That is a requirement for listings in compliance to get paid. You need the MLS attached to the opportunity. And this is how you do it. So I'm going to select from the MLS and I will find that 123 Main Street in Epping. I'll search for it. This is the MLS listing. This would be your MLS. Select that MLS listing. It populates all the information about the MLS, and that information transfers to DocuSign. All right, then we are ready to go to the documents area. So now we've completed the details area of a transaction, and now we're going to begin the document process. On the Documents tab, we need to know what kind of documents we're going to get signed. So we use a checklist. The New Hampshire listing checklist, in this case, over on the left-hand side, when I choose pick checklist type, I will choose the New Hampshire listing checklist, mainly because this is a New Hampshire property and I'm an agent in New Hampshire and it's a listing. So that's why I chose that one. Choose any other ones as per the need of the transaction. All right. Now that we have the transaction checklist added, we can see all of the checklist items. These are not documents. These are placeholders for when we're done signing the documents in DocuSign. We will bring them back here and put them in these placeholders. We will not do it manually. We'll bring them in directly from DocuSign using these drop downs in a moment. Now, do not leave Command. Do not leave here and go to DocuSign or .loop for that matter. Don't do that. You're going to click on Start a Transaction over here on the right-hand side. If you don't see that button, that means the DocuSign or .loop is not connected in your settings area of your program. If they are not connected, reach out to me and we can get you connected there. Now, start a transaction. We click Start a Transaction. And I don't want to use .loop. Oh, you know what? Look at that. DocuSign was having a problem last week with connections, and I disconnected mine to test it. So now let me show you how to reconnect DocuSign, because the dialog box that popped up was asking me if I wanted to do a .loop loop. I don't. I want to do a DocuSign transaction. So we're going to go to our settings area of Command, and it's of course taking its sweet time to get there. This is going to be one of those days where Command is going to be running slow during my trainings, and that's just going to frustrate me. It's going to frustrate you a little bit, but more so me. So here we are in the settings area, and all right, we're going to come down and we're going to make sure that DocuSign is connected. So we will log into DocuSign. They had a problem last week. It lasted for about a day, but I haven't done anything with DocuSign since then. So now that was it. My DocuSign is now connected. So I'm going to come back over here to the transaction. And now in the transaction, when I go to start this transaction, I'll refresh this page here. I will now see the option, in my case, to choose DocuSign or .loop to create my transaction. Today we're working with DocuSign, so I will click on DocuSign. Notice that I still haven't been in DocuSign yet. I'm still working in Command. Now DocuSign is asking me for a login. So I'll go ahead and log into DocuSign here. The room has been created. The room is attached to the transaction, the opportunity in Command. They are perfectly meshed together now. As a matter of fact, without even doing anything, if I go back to Command, you can see it says attach files from DocuSign, and it wants to know the working folder for where the documents are, or the signed documents in DocuSign. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. So when you choose working folder, choose Room Docs, and this way when we get the signed documents in DocuSign, they will be available right here to pull them back to Command. All right, that's where you can stop this little section and just know that what you've done here, you created a contact, the primary signer. You created the opportunity under that contact so that the primary signer becomes seller one in the case of a listing, buyer one in the case of a buying opportunity. We went in through the details to finish out the details of the transaction in Command. We went to the documents area, we pulled a checklist, and we created our DocuSign room right from Command. Awesome. So now we're going to go and jump into DocuSign. Now, from here is where the actual lesson begins for today, because all of that sets us up for a very smooth envelope creation, sending out, signing, and receiving process. If you're wondering why I did all of that, it's because I don't want to have to do any of it again. And I don't want to have anything be disconnected or not not in alignment. So I've completely aligned all four wheels of my car, and we're going to go through this process. Here we are. We are in the DocuSign room, and we're going to begin the envelope process. Now, there are all kinds of things that you can put in an envelope. You can put a Valentine's Day card. You can put a Christmas card. You can put any kind of card. You can put anything in an envelope. Just kidding. Mainly what we're going to put in here is forms and documents. Now, in last week's class, we talked about the difference between forms and documents in DocuSign. What a PDF is in DocuSign versus a DocuSign form. Now, some of you might use zip forms. Zip Forms is a third-party service that basically stores and regulates access to specific forms for specific states. In Maine, you need to use zip forms to access your Maine forms. In DocuSign, you can still access those zip forms from DocuSign. You don't have to go over to zip forms to do it. As a matter of fact, if you have connected, and even if you have not, if you have connected your DocuSign account to zip forms, you don't need to go to zip forms to get your documents. That's it. You can click this add button inside of a room and choose zip forms, and it will connect to your zip form account, and it will pull the documents into DocuSign from zip form, and it will preload all of the data in this DocuSign room into those forms, and it will send those forms here for you from DocuSign. It's not as complicated as a lot of people make it to be. There's, people think, well, I got to do this in Command, I got to do this in DocuSign, and I got to do this in zip forms. Command and DocuSign. You can bring your zip forms into DocuSign from this button. We are going to use the DocuSign forms for this class. This means that we're not going to bring in any third-party forms from any other sources. Although, if we wanted to, in a moment, I'm going to bring in a PDF versus a DocuSign form. By the way, when you look at this, you can switch between views. We talked about this in the DocuSign 101 class that we did. There's a grid view and a list view that you can change between. When you're in list view, I like to show this because the blue icons in DocuSign represent forms. These are fillable, templatized forms that are from DocuSign's library. Whereas if we bring in a PDF to this, let me go ahead and see if I can bring in, do I have anything? I do. Well, I do have one right on my desktop. Perfect. I'll bring a PDF into this room, and you can see that when I bring a PDF from my desktop, a scanned document or a printed document, you see it's red, and it looks, when you look at it, it looks like a good old-fashioned form, but it's a PDF form. It has no fillable fields, and you have to add all of the fields in the envelope creation process in the field area to put those together. We don't like that. So we're going to do forms. I'll do that PDF one in a little bit. So here we are. All of the forms that we have all available to us. Now, each of these forms has one place where we as the agent can fill it out. And that's here in the documents area of the room. So if I was to go into any one of these documents and there was an area where I, as the agent, needed to fill out information or needed to later on, sign it, I can edit the document here. I can't edit signatures, but I can edit the information. So let's take, for example, here, exclusive listing agreement designated agency. When I open this document in the documents area, this is where I can edit the information on the document. You'll see that there are a bunch of empty fields where I can put my cursor in here and I can put in information. This information, if we brought the listing from the MLS into the opportunity, that information is now in this document automatically, just because we added the listing in command before we created the DocuSign room. All of that listing information is populated. Now, as the agent, all I need to do is go through this and fill out any additional information that is not in the document details area. So, for example, owned by the seller, consisting of property legal description, and then deeds in book, deed books, and deed book page. So these things that you're going to need to fill out. So that's why they're available for you to fill out here. So you can see that as you go through, every dialog box has a little indication of what it's supposed to be. This dialog box here is for the optional seller to name. This one is optional for today's date. So we're going to go ahead and put in 2/15/22, so I can fill that out right here. There's a property address to option. I don't need it. So the property legal description is housing. I'm not a real estate agent. Don't take that for gospel on me. Deeds in book, deed books. We'll call it the deed book, Nottingham. I don't know. I'm not. I can't even spell the town that I live in. Nottingham. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Page number 6. I don't know. It's a big book in Nottingham. There's the pricing for this. This is the contract amount. Now, this particular property was already in the MLS, so that number is already in here because it brought it from the MLS. But I could change that if I needed to. So for the purchase price quote, I have the maximum lease amount if necessary. I got all of the things that I need. You know better about how to fill this document out than I do. In fact, if you're not familiar with how to fill this particular document out, please feel free to attend any of the broker training classes, including the orientation once a month, the Ask the Broker on Mondays at 1 p.m. at kellertv.com, and on Fridays, back to basics at 1 to 2 on kellertv.com, and also night school at kellertv.com at 6 to 7 or 6 to whenever they finish on Thursday nights. So there's plenty of options on how to find out how to work these documents, okay? So I'm just filling out some random information here to demonstrate for you that as the agent, I can fill out certain fields here. And so there's anything that's fillable now is for me as an option to fill that out. The signers do not fill that out. Why? Because they're for me. So I can tell that any field that's available for me to edit here is for me to fill. If I can't edit a field, seller's initials, makes sense, right? I can't edit that. That must mean it's not for me to fill out. All right. So that's the general idea behind all of the forms in DocuSign. And by the way, these forms would be identical if they came from Zip Forms. They would look a little bit better because Zip Forms has a nicer way of putting the fields on documents. But now that we've completed this document, we're going to save and close it. The additional information that I've added is now embedded in the document. It's embedded in this form. It is editable from now to the end of time as a form. Once we receive it back as a signed PDF, it's not editable. But we could use this again if we got a phone call from our the seller and we put this in front of them and they said, "Oh, look, that price in there, $450, that's wrong. You're missing a couple of zeros." We can come back and edit this page and resend the document for signature. We can't edit the signed copy because it's already done. You could void it, you could add it, line it out and have people initial it, but you just could come back here and resend this with the updated information to have a clean, proper document and history of the other ones, but still you'd have a clean document. Okay. So now that we have our document generally filled out, and I didn't fill out every field because we don't need to for this example. I think you get the idea there. Now that we have that, we can take that document and prepare it for signature. So to prepare it for signature, We can do a lot of different things, but let me just kind of briefly go over your options on taking a document and preparing it for signature. Number one, you can click in the checkbox to select the document, which will bring up a brand new set of tools on the top of the screen here. And they are, copy, move, and all that, plus the create envelope object. Okay. Now, if I switch back over to grid view, when you select a document in grid view, you're clicking the little checkbox in the upper left-hand corner of a document, and you'll get that set of tools as well. If you're selecting multiple documents, when you select multiple documents here, you can right click and choose create envelope. Well, like you could do that with a single document as well. You can right click a document and choose create envelope. And finally, if you're actually inside of the editing window of a document and you don't want to go back to the documents tab, and you're like, okay, this is the one, this is ready. Let me go ahead and take this and put it directly into an envelope. No problem. Up here on the document actions menu, which is a couple of clicks left of the closing X button, there is create an envelope. So you have several ways that you can create an envelope for a document in DocuSign. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring 2 documents into the envelope process. And I'm going to show you how we create the envelope and how we work it through. So quite simply, what we're about to do is we take these documents that these forms that we've kind of partially filled out. We've made sure that we have all of the information that we need to put on them. We've grabbed them, we stacked them together nicely, and we're about to stick them inside an envelope and send them off for signature. So we've verified everything's to our satisfaction, and we're ready for somebody to sign it. So we'll put it in an envelope. So we'll go ahead and select those 2 documents and create an envelope. Now, when you create an envelope in DocuSign, what you're doing is you're isolating those documents and you're creating a packet that is going to need an identification number or name, an envelope name. It's going to need to know who these documents are going to in the add recipients area. And it's also going to need to know what message you want to send to those recipients so that they know what this document is all about and what they need to do. So if we start at the top of the screen, this envelope name is for you. This is not it's never going to be seen by anybody but you. So you can give it a name that references what you need it to be so that you know what's in here. So I will call it Disclosure of Information and Exclusive Listing Agreement. And apparently it thinks I said the word duck. All right. So Disclosure of Information and Exclusive Listing Agreement. That's the name of the envelope for me. All set. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom and explain the message to all recipients. We'll get to the recipients in a minute. But in the email subject, I always relate this story because it's a personal story and it made a lot of sense to share it with you guys because as a consumer, when I bought this house, the house I'm living in right now, I bought it from an agent who was not a KW agent. My agent was not a KW agent. And in doing so, every time that my agent at that time sent me a document through DocuSign to sign, the envelope in the subject for the email that I received always said the same thing. Please DocuSign, which was the default for DocuSign Rooms. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but I realized as she kept sending me more documents to sign, every subject of every email was the same, and it made it impossible for me to go through the dozen emails that I had for the signature process and determine what was in that particular email so that I could get to the documents in question. Do yourself a favor for your clients. Put an email subject in that references what this set of documents is. Let's try it again. Please sign the Disclosure of Information Agreement and the Exclusive Listing Agreement. So I'm just using dictation here to put something in here so that you can see that it's different than Please DocuSign. And it tells the person who is receiving this email what it is. So in the body of the email, hi, Jackie, Robert here. Just wanted to check in with you and say hi. Here's the two documents we spoke of, the disclosure of information agreement and the exclusive listing agreement. Please take a look, sign them as needed. If you have any questions, please feel free to get back to me. That's the kind of thing, your words, make your own words, make your own statements, use your voice, and say it so that they know what they're doing, what they need to do, and that they can always reach out to you for assistance. Those three things, giving the envelope a name for you, giving the envelope a subject line for your client, and information about what they need to do in the email message, will go a long way for your professionalism and for building relationships with your clients. So now let's talk about what's in this envelope and how we can add recipients. There are two documents in this envelope, and we can click on them to view them. We cannot edit them in the envelope. So we can't do that. No matter what we do, if we click on them, we're just going to see them. I'll go ahead and click on the exclusive listing agreement, and you can see here, it looks exactly like what we had filled out in the documents area, but we can't make any adjustments here. If something is wrong when you're at this point in the document process, you will have to leave this envelope and go modify the document. Okay. So we can view them. We could also add additional documents from the room. So if we were looking at this and it has two in here and we wanted to add the wire form, the wire fraud, we could click on this and we could find the wire fraud alert and we could add the wire fraud alert to this process. So yeah, I'll put the wire fraud in there. There we go. It's going to bring in the wire fraud and I can click on this to view it. Now, if I needed to fill something out on this document, again, I can't do it here. The wire fraud alert happens to be one of those things where it's just a signature required by the client. So I can put that into this particular situation where I'm adding to the envelope from the room a document that is already ready to go. Now, I'm going to leave these three in here and I'm going to use these three documents. And by the way, one of the neat things that you can do in here is if you wanted them to get the wire fraud first, you could actually drag the wire fraud to the left and say, okay, the first document they're going to receive is wire fraud. The second is disclosure of information. The third is the listing agreement. It could go the other way. You could move the documents around so that they receive them and see them in the order that you want them to see them, which is kind of cool. Now down at the bottom here where it says add recipients to the envelope, it's really important that we slow down now and explain what's happening. When we say add recipients, what we're saying is who's going to sign these documents? Who's the email? Where are we going? Where is this envelope being sent to? The address. When we click on add recipient, we're going to see three options. Or if you're only using PDFs and not DocuSign forms or zip forms, if you're only using PDFs, you will not see the pre-tagged roles option. You will only see room participants and email address. And it goes in order of priority and preference on what you see here and which one you should use. DocuSign forms, the blue icon forms, will always use pre-tagged roles. And the reason goes all the way back to command, you guys. Because in command, when we specified the name of the contact that we built the opportunity form, what we were actually choosing was, in a listings case, seller 1. We chose seller 1 back in command, and that's the person that we put in that position was seller 1. Jackie Astuto is, in this document, seller 1. Seller 2 would be Jackie's, in the case of a listing, a co-seller. The person who is listed first, the person who we create the opportunity for in command, is always seller 1 or buyer 1 or tenant 1 or landlord 1. Okay? Anybody that we add secondary, in some cases we don't, in some cases we do, would be a co-buyer or co-seller or co-leasee. But remember that those are what we call roles, right? So when we designate somebody in command as the primary person, we're designating them in DocuSign as a pre-tagged role for who is what on the document. Who takes what role on the document. So when we choose pre-tagged roles, and we can only do this with forms, PDFs don't know who from anything. They're just flat, stupid documents. They don't know anything. Pre-tagged roles only work on forms. So we can go into these forms. And when we have multiple forms in the room, which we do, we can see that we have the wire fraud alert. We have the disclosure of information on lead-based paint. We got the disclosure down here. So we've got multiple documents that are in this room right now. And we can see that we're going to be sending these out. So do we need the buyer to sign them? No, we need the seller. That's what we're doing with. So we need a seller 1. So Robert, why is there a buyer 1, a buyer 2? Why is there a buyer agent on these things? Well, the forms have places for those people, okay? And because they have places for those people, we can send them out through here if necessary and get those people to sign this document. It doesn't mean that right now we need to get everybody's signature. Right now, we need seller 1 to sign the wire fraud alert. And we don't have a seller 2. This is Jackie's doing this on her own. So anything that says seller 2 on a document, we're not using that slot. So we don't need it. So we don't bother with seller 2. We do have a thing that here says listing agent. There is a listing agent role on one of these documents, specifically the disclosure of information on lead-based paint. Because of that, we can put ourselves on the document. So when we look at this, we can say, do these people apply for this signing process? If so, who plays that part? Who is that role? Seller 1 is Jackie Astuto. The listing agent is me. And in doing so, what I'm doing is I'm pre-filling and preparing the document right here to know who's supposed to sign it. Great. I'll click Add Selected. Now, remember, if you have a PDF that you're adding to an envelope, PDFs do not have spots for people to sign. So you'll have to put those spots in there manually. You'll have to add those spots yourself. To do that, we'll talk about it in a moment because we'll bring a PDF and we'll look at it. But for now, we're just dealing with the forms. So here we are down at the bottom of the screen now. We've added 2 recipients. We've added Jackie Astuto, who is seller 1. That's the role for Jackie Astuto. Listing agent is the role for Robert Vincent. That means the system knows where Robert is supposed to sign and where Jackie is supposed to sign on the next page. Now, this is where people get confused about the order in which people receive the documents. So right now, these 2 documents are, these 2 people are going to receive these 3 documents simultaneously. And how do I know that? Because on the left-hand side, each of these people is listed as number 1 in terms of when they receive the document. So 1 indicates that in this case, both people are going to receive this simultaneously. Now, if I wanted one person to receive the document first, I could change the second person in this case, maybe I'll change myself here, to number 2. And when I do that, you can see that I have Jackie is number 1. She will receive all 3 documents before I will. I will not see them or even know that they're ready to come out to me until she has signed and completed these documents. It will not do partial. It will say, all right, Jackie, you got to sign these documents. If it takes her a week, then I'm not going to see these documents for a week. Okay. So in the case of ordering people, if you are the agent and you need to sign a document, go ahead and co-number yourself with the first person in the list. This allows you to sign it at the same time, before, after, anytime you want, than the first person on the list. So by doing this, you're going to see in a moment that when we're finished with the envelope, DocuSign is going to take us back to the signing process and say, hey, you have a document you need to sign. We just told us, we told ourselves we do. Since you have a document you need to sign, you can sign it now before Jackie even receives it, because technically both of you are receiving it simultaneously. She might not check her email to tonight, but you can complete the document and sign it right now because you're co-numbered with her for number 1. If you want to sign things after her, put yourself at number 2. If you want her to sign something after you, put her at number 2. And you can do this with any amount of people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's something important to remember about this, though. Jackie is the primary signer on this. She holds the seller 1 position, the seller 1 role. If we had another person, her partner John Morgan, just a person that she was going to sell this house with, she would be responsible for filling out all of the form data because we put her in the seller 1 position. It's not a priority of persons, it's a priority of position. Seller 1 is going to get all of the fields visible to them to sign out. Seller 2 is just going to sign the document in agreement with what seller 1 put on the document. It's important to remember that because you want to make sure that if they're going to 2 separate emails or if they're going to 2 different places, you want to make sure that you give the person who is going to fill out the form access through seller 1. Seller 1 is that position. You can't do it with seller 2 because you probably could, but it would take you forever. You don't want to waste your time doing that. So seller 1 will be responsible for filling it out and signing it, and seller 2 will be responsible for basically agreeing to it. Just keep that in mind as we go forward. Okay, now that we have both of our people that need to sign the document and they're ready to go, we also can look over here to the right of the names of the people signing in their role, and we have options on how or what they're going to be doing with when they receive this document. So the needs to sign button has an option for needs to sign, which is the default, needs to view, which means somebody will need to click on the document in DocuSign through their email, look at it, and acknowledge that they viewed the document. Terms and conditions and agreements in iTunes, the same where you must click, I agree to these terms. I see this document. I looked at it. Yeah, that's what that is, needs to view. Receives a copy is someone who will receive a copy of the signed document upon completion. Specify recipient is where this will be sent to Jackie, and then she will specify someone else to send it to. So it's kind of like a bounce. So she would bounce it to someone else. And then as a witness for signer, so someone that is going to stand as a witness for an electronic signature. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean that you need to physically be present, but the fact that we're saying that someone is going to sign as a witness, not as a co-signer, not as signer number 2, but as signing that I agree and I understand that this document came to me. I reviewed this document and I am a witness to the document's correctness. I agree with the information on it. So that's what that's for. Additionally, a very rarely used option is to add access authentication and adding a private message. Adding authentication essentially means that you, as the agent, can create your own code, a little private password, so that Jackie Astuto, when she receives this document in her email, if it's a shared email and somebody says, oh, that's an interesting document, and they click on it, they're going to need to know a password to open that document. Jackie doesn't know the password because you haven't made one. So if you put a password in of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, the only way that's really viable to get that password to someone is to either text it to their private phone and say, here's your document password, or to call them on the phone and say, write this down. Because what you're doing is you're isolating that person in their electronic world and trying to get them so that they have 2 objects, an email and a password. And these are 2 separate things. And they need to use that password to open that email document. Now, it's best used when somebody is in a shared environment where you have one email with multiple people that have access to that email, and they can then you can reach out to them and say, hey, here's your password for that, so nobody else can see it. So it's little used, but it is there. It's kind of handy, and it's good to know that you have access to that. And of course, we have add a private message. Adding a private message is an individual message to an individual signer, whereas down below, when we had messages to all the recipients get this one, but you can add a private message to Jackie and say, hey, Jackie, I promised you I wouldn't tell your husband that you're selling the house. So that's a joke. Jen, it's a joke. I swear I was just kidding. So you can add a private message. All right. All right. So we're not going to do any of those there, but we can do that for the seller one and the listing agent as well. All right. If you have any questions about what you've seen there, reach out to me because I've covered almost every possible nook and cranny about the envelope section. Now we're going to go on and take what we've put in the envelope and we're going to verify that it has all the fields and all the places and all the stuff that we need. And we're going to make sure that that can go out. Okay. So when we clicked next, we're brought to this screen here. And this screen here gives us what this person, Jackie Astuto and Robert Vincent, are going to sign. Okay. So I can look at what Robert needs to sign. And in this case here, on the right-hand side, each of the documents is listed. There's the exclusive listing agreement, there's the wire fraud, and there is the disclosure. Notice that the wire fraud only has a blue sticky label on it, whereas the disclosure has a yellow and blue, and the exclusive listing agreement has yellow and blue. This is an indication for you who is going to sign this document, who is going to need to either signature or initial this document. So on the left-hand side, these are the who. So at the very top of the screen on the left-hand side, in the drop-down, you can specify whose document version you want to look at, whether it be Robert's or Jackie's. And they have unique colors. So the blue indicates Jackie and the yellow indicates Robert. You can then go through the document, make sure things are in the right place, that the signatures and everything is ready to go. And at that point, if everything's good on all of the documents, in this case, we have 3. If everything looks good on all the documents and you're happy with the way it's lining up, you can go ahead and click send. Or you can come up to the actions button and you can save and close this as a draft for later. Or you can discard this completely if you don't like it and you can go back and work on it and clean it up. Additionally, you have a preview for the recipient. So each of the recipients, both you and the signer in this case, because those are the 2 people on the document, you can look at the signature processes for each of them as if they were filling it out themselves. So right now we're looking at Robert's signature process where he would start and it would go through and it acts just like the process that they would go through. So what I'm clicking isn't really doing anything per se, because this is just a preview, okay? But that's what you can do. Is you can recipient preview for Jackie and see what it's going to look like for her. And you as an agent, by the way, you should be doing this. You should be doing this to make sure that all of the places that you expect someone to sign are going to light up properly and how the process works. See, here's even has a little fake signature for testing this, making sure it works. Now, remember, this is not actually signing the document. I don't think that needed to be said, but I'll say it anyway. You're not actually signing it. Okay. So now that we've previewed for both recipients and we're satisfied that all the boxes that we expect them to have to fill out are ready to fill out, now we can send it. So I'll go ahead and click send. So what happens now is that because I set this up where both of us, both signers, were in position number 1. One person did not have a higher priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so to speak. We weren't numbered differently. Because of that, as soon as I clicked send, it took me back to my envelopes area of DocuSign. And it tells you right here, you have a document that needs your signature. Now, this wouldn't happen if we put ourselves at number 2, because number 1 hasn't signed it yet. Jackie hasn't seen it or signed it. So if that was the case, this would say waiting for signatures. It wouldn't say needs your signature. And when you click on it, you would not be able to sign it using this sign button because it's waiting for Jackie first to sign the document. So when you're looking at your envelopes and you see needs my signature, that means one of 2 things. You're signing it at the same time as the person who is also signing it, or your other signatures that were before you are done and you're now ready to sign it in your position in the signing process. In either case, When you click on needs my signature, or if you click on draft, in the needs my signature option, you'll have the ability to sign right here, right now, without having to wait for Jackie to sign it. And you can just click on sign. So now it's going to open up the signing version of DocuSign. This is what a recipient would see. This is exactly what you would see if you open this in your email, which, by the way, it's in your email because it simultaneously sent that email to you and Jackie, and it put this in the envelope area. So when we're done here and you check your email, it's going to say needs to sign. Don't freak out if you've done this process, because that's email went out when you hit send. We're just preempting the signing process. So if you were signing this at home, at home, like there's something physical going on here. If you were signing this where electronically through your email, you would probably have that I agree to the terms and conditions of signing. Jackie will definitely have a little checkbox to click here, and we'll see that in a minute. But because we're doing it within DocuSign, we don't have to do that as the signer. We can click continue, start the signature process, put our initials there, put our initials here. And yes, you're looking at it going, well, what the other sellers hasn't initialed them yet. Yeah, because they probably haven't opened their email yet. So we have wherever, I'm just signing everything. I'm not being specific about it. So I'll just click finish. Remember, there's some optionals and things like that. But I've now digitally signed the document, and there's the waiting for others. It took me back to the envelopes area, and it said waiting for others. The listing agent has signed the document, and there's the signed. And now we're waiting for seller 1 to sign the document, and it needs to sign. So now what I'm going to do in the background, and I'm not going to switch this around to show you because you've already seen this once before. I'm going to open the email. Actually, I can do it right here. Why not? I'll do it right here. I'll open up the email for Jackie. Okay. And in doing so, you can see it on the screen right there. So here is the email that Jackie received. So when I click on that, is it showing in the Zoom window? It's not showing in Zoom. Let me show it in Zoom. There we go. Now that you see the email from DocuSign to Jackie, we can click on the review documents, and Jackie can go through her signing process. There's that I agree. The continue. And when we start with Jackie's, you'll see that the initials for Robert are already over here. Because we've already signed it and she's signing it after us, even though technically she could have signed it before us, it's going to show all of the places for her to initial. So I'll go ahead and put the adopt and signs, and I'll go ahead and do all the signature processes and initials for Jackie on all the document places. And there we go. And we're good to go. And we can click finish. By the way, I don't know if you're aware of this, but somebody who is signing the document can also choose to decline to sign the document. Now, what happens most of the time is when somebody declines to sign, they just don't open the email and you never get anything back. And it's just, no, okay, we'll void that because they're not going to sign it. But you're not probably going to tell your client this. It's not something that you actively, discuss about how to use DocuSign to do all of the things that it can do. But one of the things they might stumble across is on other actions, there is a decline to sign option. And you can also assign this to someone else and say, you know what? I'm not going to sign this. I want someone else to sign it who can fill out the fields better than I. So I'm not going to do the decline to sign here, but you know that it's available. It's not often that they find it, because most of the time they just don't want to touch anything, and they're like, oh no, I'm just going to leave it alone. But if they do find it, you may find a document come back to you that says declined to sign. So for now, I'll just go ahead and leave it as signature. So I'll click on finish, and that will finish out the document. Now let's talk about this dialog box real quick. This dialog box implies for your signer, for your client, that they need to fill this out to get a copy of their document. They do not. As a matter of fact, just sitting here looking at this thing, there's already a signed version of it headed back to their inbox, and it's going to be fine. This is just for them to put their information in and create a DocuSign account should they want to. You can safely tell any of your clients, you can click on this box here and see no thanks, because you don't need to do it. Although if they want to create an account, they absolutely can. The other thing is, right from this dialog box, they can print a combined PDF or a split PDF of all these documents. So if we did separate, we have 3 documents, it would give me 3 separate files, or it would give me a combined PDF with all those files in one. They can also print, good old-fashioned real print, by clicking the printer icon, and we'll go to the printer that's connected to the computer, of course, if there is one. All right, so when we click the no thanks, that's going to actually finish the transaction. So when we click no thanks, we're going to get a you've finished signing statement here. Her email is going to light up with a completed version of the document, and they can click on that and see the completed version, and they can do it immediately. And here is the version that they can, again, print PDFs or print hard copies, and they can close it. They can also go through the document history, learn a little bit about DocuSign, view the PDF certificate, all this stuff. So this is what they see. All right. And I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. You should absolutely, as an agent, go through every possible place in here and click on this. You should be a DocuSign expert so that you can answer the questions when your client calls you and says, I'm in DocuSign, and how do I... We don't want you to be reaching out to support at that point in time. Okay, reach out early. Come see me, sit with these classes, look at this stuff, go play with DocuSign, send yourself some things to sign and test it out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click close here, and you're all done. So Jackie's email is all done, and when she comes back, you'll see that everything's all in here and she's good to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and close Jackie's email here, and we're going to go back and look at DocuSign in Command. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and refresh our signature envelope page here, because now we're going to see that both people have signed it. Now, you might be tempted if you're looking in this. Let me show you how we got here real quick. In the envelopes area, we now have a green completed statement. When you click on this, you can see that the 2 signatures are in here. There's also a view documents option. You don't need this. You don't need to click this, because those documents that are signed have already automatically been put back in the documents area. So those documents are here, and they're here, and they have different colors now. Look at this. We had before just blue icon documents. Those were forms. We now have green signed versions, green signed, and we also have a certification document which combines all signatures and tells you that this person in this case signed all 3 documents. The documents that are going to Command are the ones that say signed. The wire fraud alert is going into the wire fraud slot in Command. The green disclosure of information of lead base going in Command. Exclusive listing agreement designated agency going in Command. Where? Let's go look. We don't need to do anything here. We're done. We go back to Command. We're going to that transaction, to that page where that person is, and we're looking at that page. And I'm going to refresh this because I'm doing this all at one time. So we want to let Command kind of check in with DocuSign to get updated information about what's been signed. So now that I've done that, if I come down here where it says attach files from, it says DocuSign. Perfect. Working folder, all of my signed documents are in my working folder called Room Docs. Just as a point of reference, we can see that when we come back to DocuSign, there's folders that we can create in the documents area. There's only one by default, and it's called Room Docs. And as evidenced by me closing the folder, the only place where documents go by default is into the Room Docs folder. So that means when we're in Command, we need to point Command to the Room document folder. By default, this will say select folder. You'll need to click this and choose Room Docs to get access to that folder so that when we come down here to the exclusive listing agreement designated agency, it will show us all of the documents that are available in the Room Documents folder. Perfect. So now what we're looking for is for the exclusive listing agreement designated agency. We are not looking for the certification. That one here says certification. That's not what we want. What we want is the disclosure, exclusive listing agreement designated agency signed. So that's what we want. So I'll click that. And now it's going to pull that in from DocuSign and put it into that slot. We have a wire fraud alert. So I'll come down here and I'll say the wire fraud alert is also signed. We also have a lead-based paint one that I had signed. Okay. I think that is, where's the lead-based? I don't know. Is it under contract? Lead-based paint? I don't know where that one is. Well, there it is. Lead-based paint disclosure. By the way, here's what happens if you do not select the working folder for each of these different folders on the left here. If you don't choose Room Docs, it'll be grayed out. So now that it's not grayed out, we're going to come over here and lead-based paint disclosure and disclosure on lead-based paint signed. Boom. So all of those documents are now in command, which means that we now have the ability to submit to Market Center. So because we were connected to DocuSign, we did our signing process there, but you see how easy it was to bring them back into command? You just return to command, select the folder where they're at, and then where the slot for their where they need to be loaded into, you just select the button on the right-hand side and find the signed version. All right, we covered a lot of information. We did run out of time. I'm not going to be able to get to the PDFs today, but we'll do that in the advanced class anyway. So we'll show you how to create fields on your PDFs. For now, though, that's going to do it. We are at 11:58. At 1 o'clock today, we have the Command 101 series, and today we're going to be going over the opportunities. We're going to be going over the opportunities and opportunity management. So that's going to be a very important one. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff we talked about here, and that'll be good for you to join me at 1 o'clock for that. At 3 o'clock today, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to go over the best settings in Command to optimize your system and to make it easier for you to do all the things you need to do. So you're definitely going to want to come back for that one at 3 o'clock in the Command 301. All of that is happening here, and you can absolutely reach out to me at any point by reaching out via command@kwclm.com. You can join our YouTube channel, subscribe to that, and watch all of the videos, including this live video here, kwtechtube.com. You can book time on my calendar at timewithrobert.com. That's my booking calendar there. Tech Lab is KW Tech TV. That's the Zoom room that we're in right now. We'll be back in this Zoom room at 1 o'clock. And we're also available on facebook.com/MCTT463. That's my feed that only has the training stuff. I don't put anything in there but training. It's all in the timeline for the most recent trainings first. And of course, you can sign up at our kwclmtraining.com portal, jump in there and grab yourself an account. It's free. You do not need an invitation. You can just go to kwclmtraining.com, click the sign up button in the top right-hand corner, get in there, and you'll have access to all of the awesome training. And it is growing as we speak. There's more training classes being added all the time. All right, that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys have an awesome day here. Let's see, come back to this right there. We'll come back to this little guy right there. Okay, so again, 1 o'clock is the next one, then 3 o'clock after that. So we are done here for now. So you have a great morning, and I will talk to you in a little bit.